welcome to our new college football podcast, The Redshirts, where we don't blow 44-10 leads at home. I'm Cal Friedman, and I'm joined alongside the fellow Redshirts.
Wait, I'm not wearing a red shirt. I didn't get the memo.
You fucked up.
I didn't get the memo. No one told me.
Shame.
Tisk, you bitch.
I feel like
I feel I'm a rapper, bitches.
I feel like Florida State right now. Damn.
Not only is he shamed because he's not wearing a red shirt, but he's an Alabama fan.
We're never gonna lose that top spot. Number one.
A red shirt if you're an Alabama fan. You should have an Alabama shirt.
Alright, well, we're definitely going to be getting into the topic about Alabama, and we're going to be getting into the topic about 6 of college football's biggest talking points of the weekend. But I am joined by Colby Guy, Kevin Fielder, and Johnny B, who doesn't have a red shirt. I'm Cal Friedman.
Turnover chain, bitches. Sorry, I had to put that in somewhere.
So we're going to get right into it.
Who's not ranked, though?
We are.
They are ranked. They're 18.
You idiot. You idiot.
Dude, that...
How is John a part of this podcast again?
This happened on the prediction podcast, too, for NFL. I said fucking LeGarrette Blount was still on the... No, what did I say? I forgot what I said. It was something retarded, though. Latavius Murray was still on the Raiders.
Yeah. And then you're like, wait, Michael Crabtree's still in a uniform, right?
Yeah, well, I just need to make sure.
Alright, I would talk about Miami a little more as they're the 18th seed, and Travis just ran for 108 yards on Bethune-Cookman.
Sorry, I had to.
But they have a lot more to talk about. So, let's get into it. First off, another team who laid waste to a team they should have beaten this weekend. Penn State won 52-0 over Akron. Saquon Barkley didn't get a touch in the first quarter, but wound up with two touchdowns and 172 yards. Trevor McSorley, a solid day after a risky couple of first drives. But Penn State looked to be finally emerging from the whole Sandusky drama that kept them kind of in the cellar of Big Ten football the last couple of years. Is it time for them to put the off-field drama behind them and really be a powerhouse in the Big Ten starting this season? John, we'll go to you first.
I believe so. I believe the hype in Penn State. I believe they should have been top 4 last year after winning the Big Ten championship. But I digress. And if you see how Alabama smashed Washington, it further proved why Penn State should have had that spot over them. And I honestly think this year they will finish in the top 4. Penn State is returning a lot of their key players and a lot of their key pieces, and they're in a Big Ten where it's really only Michigan and Ohio State and a shaky Wisconsin team. So I really see this as their year. This is their year to finish in the top 4. I think it's playoff or bust at this point for them. And yes, it is Akron, but putting up 52 points on any team is impressive. It shows how well your offense is. And like I said, with a somewhat tough Big Ten schedule, I think that's when we'll really see how good they will be this year, but I'm buying into their hype.
Alright, well, keep in mind, you have said that they only have Ohio State and Michigan to worry about, but those are 2 teams that put on big performances in the opening weekend. Colby, let's go to you before you shove more ink up your nose.
I want to do it more, if I'm being honest.
Before he goes, speaking of that, they actually have Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks.
Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten. And I also think Michigan's better, so Michigan's better than Penn State.
So you're not feeling Penn State?
You're not buying into the hype?
Not yet.
All right, Kevin, we'll go to you. Do you think Saquon Barkley and Trevor McSorley could bring Penn State really into the light again?
Oh, come on. They beat Akron. Let's stop acting like they beat
Miami beat Bethune-Cookman.
Talent everywhere. They beat goddamn
At least Akron's an FBS team. Bethune-Cookman's like Division 2.
Could beat Akron. I mean, look, I get that. I get that they're recruiting well and everything, and I get that they have a talented pool around them. But they beat Akron.
But you're calling Miami good for beating Bethune-Cookman, who's not even FBS.
I get that, trying to talk about how Miami's back and how Miami's a national championship contender or they're a playoff contender.
never been
They're still
enough.
playing the goddamn Big Ten with teams like goddamn Michigan and goddamn
Oh,
Ohio
Michigan
State.
and Ohio State. That's it.
Well, I'm away.
There's like Purdue to play against too. Don't forget
That's
that.
it.
Oh yeah, Purdue. It's their year.
They played Louisville well. It's their year.
John, you mentioned how that's it. That's a very good that's it. If you have to play Michigan, who's now top 4, and Ohio State, both teams were playoff contenders, national championship contenders. Let's not act like they're playing in the goddamn SEC right now.
Ohio State can
Well,
beat
the
any
SEC,
team on
the
any given
SEC is
week.
basically Alabama and everyone else.
I'll weigh in on this personally. I really like, yes, Kevin mentioned it. It is still Akron, and it is hard to really get a good judgment on college football teams in week 1, especially with not really knowing, who's really going to be their big player unless you've been following them. I think Penn State looked very good when they were playing. Saquon Barkley didn't get a touch the entire first quarter, and then wound up scoring on 2 touchdowns, 172 yards. Very good game from him. People have been talking about him for Heisman possibly. I would really like to see that. Penn State, I feel like we all can relate to this.
Okay. Heisman is a little too early to assume that he's going to win Heisman because he ran well against Akron.
No, I know, but I'm saying
It's hard to call anyone Heisman. If anyone, it's Calvin Ridley or Jalen Hurts.
Okay, shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up.
They played Florida State's defense.
I'm sorry, I had to.
You do have to look at it though, and just think. We all grew up watching a very good Penn State year after year. Rose Bowl winners, national title contenders.
Yeah.
Colby or Mike
And
Smear.
child rapist. Wait, what?
But yep, that happens. Almost pissed it all away. But in my opinion, it's good to see one of the bigger.
Yeah, I'm
programs
glad
in
to
college
see them
football
back.
Well, another team that isn't coming back. Texas thought they could really rebound after the 3 awful years of Charlie Strong with Tom Herman. However, they played a much better team than Akron, and it showed. They gave up 51 points to unranked Maryland, losing by 10. Charlie Strong's reign really hasn't led to anything. Tom Herman's first game didn't look too good. Kevin, are Texas sort of falling into the sleeping giants of college football?
I mean, yes, okay. It's been 3 years with Charlie Strong. They didn't fire him. They kept him there. They let him run the program down to the ground. And then they bring in Todd Herman, and he gets absolutely demolished by Maryland. And when I mean absolutely demolished, I mean absolutely demolished. There's no excuse for scheduling a team like this and then going in at home, nonetheless, to do this and get almost destroyed. I get that you dropped 41 on them, but it's Maryland. It's the same Maryland team that has struggled for the past few years, moved to the Big Ten, and struggled last year as well. I mean, come on. The funny thing is next year, at the end of the year, we'll still be talking about how Texas is back. Texas is back. It's hilarious at this point that every year it's Texas is back, and then Texas actually comes out and plays. No, they're not going to win anything this year.
Well, it looks like they really need some high-class wide receiver like Cruz to really turn their season around at this point. Colby, you watched this 92-point fiesta. Maryland came out with the win. Texas.
Damn, Cal, wait. Damn, Cal, you know how to add? Damn, Cal.
Yeah.
Texas defense apparently didn't look good. Colby, how far off do you think Texas are from really contending for the Big 12 again?
Texas didn't look too bad, but I like what Michigan did more, honestly. Like,
You mean Maryland?
Michigan had in that game looked amazing.
You mean Maryland?
Their young quarterback was really nice. And the one thing I do have with Texas is that the offense didn't show up as much as I would want them to. Because most of their points came with their defense or special teams. But it was a good game played by both teams. I think Maryland has a pretty good program.
But do you think this is a bad, like, in terms of Texas's standpoint, do you think that this is just a bad week or a sign of things to come?
I think it was just a bad week. I mean, Michelle wasn't that terrible. It's just that they need to play better. Like, they didn't play up to their competition, and Maryland took advantage, and they won the game.
Well, everything's bigger in Texas, and it was not looking very big for Texas this week in terms of natural disasters, or Baylor, or Rice, or Texas A&M. John.
Texas State, so it's all okay.
Yep, it doesn't matter. Texas State, the new powerhouses of Texas football. John, again, this is another team that we all grew up watching, that were near the top every single year. How far away are they from the top now?
Well, I mean, it looked like Texas got hit by Hurricane Terrapin in that game. I mean, they
That's such a bad joke. It's not even funny.
they just got bullied that whole game by a Terrapins team that has constantly struggled in their new conference ever since moving over to the Big Ten from the ACC. And to see a team like Maryland come in and just take them down like that, especially with a coach like Tom Herman, who led a team like Houston to great seasons, and seasons ending in beating teams like Florida State in a bowl game. Word to Colby. And
Fuck you.
it's just Texas, like Kevin said, I'm not buying into Texas anymore. Like, every year it's like constantly that they're gonna bounce back. It's finally time. And it's not happening. And it's not gonna happen this year either. I could see them finishing 3, 4, 5 losses this year, honestly, in the Big 12, including teams like Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. And even a team like TCU. It's really...
Get it out. Come on, get it out.
It's just really... It's not going to happen this year. They're going to struggle.
I mean, Cal, mind if I interject right now?
Yeah,
I don't
sure.
think the issue with Texas right now is their offense. I think their offense will be fine. I think their quarterback, what is his name? Shane Bushelli? I don't know how to
Well,
pronounce
yeah,
it.
that's the Big 12 for you. All high-quality offenses and no defense.
But the issue with that team is their defense. They let Maryland throw only 15 passes all game and allowed them to run 43 times for almost 300 yards. Let's address the fact that their defense is worse than Swiss cheese at this point. I'm pretty sure there's more holes in this offense than like goddamn Swiss cheese half the time.
Defense.
But the issue with that team is they need to figure out what their defense is, because in a conference like the Big 12, teams will score 60 on them. Teams will score 60 and not give a shit afterwards. Teams like Oklahoma may go in there and drop 70. I mean, come on, we need to be addressing the fact that their defense was terrible.
Well, Kevin makes a good point, actually, because you look at the Big 12, it's one of the most unforgiving conferences every single year, especially with the no conference title game, in which it makes it even harder to judge. But to me, Texas hired Charlie Strong a few years ago to be more of a defensive coach. That didn't work out. Their offense struggled. They were mediocre after mediocre after mediocre. Right now, they brought in a coach who led almost unstoppable offenses in the CUSA at Houston, or actually the American, as we call it now. But they've brought him in. The offense looked good. The defense really didn't. And you let a team who is been notoriously a struggling college football program drop 51 in one of the most intimidating places to play in prime time in a massive game. So this really hurts to see Texas just fall off like this. It's hard, really, because, again, we mentioned Penn State. Like, we grew up watching them be dominant. Same thing with Texas, but just really poor. They have plenty of time to turn it around. And as Colby said, it obviously could just be one bad week with their defense. But, as we've said, unforgiving conference, they're going to have to change it up soon, because they're going to have to play another game next week. Okay, another team that looked disappointing this opening weekend, and one player in specific, Sam Darnold, was expected to be one of the better players in the country this year. He didn't throw a touchdown for the first time since his first ever start, and he had 2 interceptions in the first half. Against Western Michigan, nonetheless, they did wind up getting the win by 17. However, they had to pull away in the fourth quarter to do so. However, such a prestigious quarterback playing poorly against a team from the MAC isn't a good sign, no matter what way you look at it. John, is this first game nerves, or is it a sign to things or is it a sign of things to come
I think
for
it's
USC this
a
season?
sign of things to come. I mean, USC is another one of those teams that are always rated highly and then really don't live up to their expectations. And people are acting like Western Michigan wasn't a top 25 team last year. Western Michigan is a tough team, even if they didn't play too many tough teams last year. They're known for their defense, and in the first half, they really showed that against a who people have called a potential first round pick in or potential number one pick in Sam Darnold and a Heisman candidate in Sam Darnold, who like you said really didn't show up in this game. So I really think USC is not going to live up to their expectations once again, and I think this is proving ground because Western Michigan is no slouch.
USC always have a lot of expectations as the historic program goes on and on. Sam Darnold is expected to be one of the Heisman candidates this year and didn't show it week one. Kevin, is this really first game? Is this really just a bad first game, or do you agree with John? Are USC sort of going to be overrated this year?
Hey, Colby, could you stop sharing screens?
Well, to answer your question, Cal, I'm not concerned about Sam Darnold. Last year, he threw 31 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. I mean, I'm not concerned about arguably the best quarterback prospect in this upcoming draft between him and Jake Allen. I'll be fair, but is his name Jake Allen or Jack Allen? No, just
Jake Allen.
Jake Allen from Wyoming. I'm not concerned yet. The thing is, I need to see them, or if this keeps going on and this keeps becoming a thing of we're not winning these games, or we're winning these games but barely, then I'll be concerned. But let's be real right now. There's still USC. I mean, USC is still a good team. I mean, Cal, you or John mentioned that they haven't been good for quite a while, and I get that. But last year they won the Rose Bowl. I mean, last year they won the Rose Bowl against Penn State, nonetheless. You know, the team that you guys were all hyping up about 20 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago maybe. So stop acting like this is, you know, big time concerning shit or anything. I mean, it's one bad game.
To correct Kevin, and including myself, Josh Allen is the Wyoming quarterback. Jake Allen was the Blues goaltender last year.
Yeah, he's not going to play quarterback for NFL anytime soon.
Yeah, that would be a problem. I don't think he would be contending for the Heisman Trophy as a goalkeeper in the NHL. Colby, bad first game for Darnold or a sign of things to come for USC?
I think it was just a bad first game.
Alright, yeah. You really look at it. I'm just going to bring up something that I brought up to Kevin earlier. This was the cover of the ESPN college football preview. Sam Darnold on the cover of it. You can tell he's everywhere. He had a very good season last year. I'm not doubting it. And I'm not doubting that he can turn it around. I think it probably was a rough first game, but it's going to go against the scouting report that he didn't start well. And I think this is really his year because there's a lot of teams in the NFL that are going to be looking for a quarterback draft time next season. The Jets, the
49ers,
the Broncos, the 49ers. Well, if the Broncos are that bad, assuming. The Steelers, depending on Big Ben's case. The Chargers, depending on Phillip Rivers' case. The Jaguars, depending on Blake Bortles. But he is one of the more proven players that we've seen so far, and he needs to step up. On to another quarterback who really stepped up this weekend. Baker Mayfield, Oklahoma's quarterback, had a world-class first half against UTEP. Only played the first half. They pulled him out to preserve anything bad or unfortunate happening. But in that first half, 19 for 20, 327 yards, and 3 touchdowns, albeit against the UTEP Miners. But a very good game no matter how you look at it. He's one of the quarterbacks in the front running for the Heisman. We're going to start with Colby on this one. What makes you believe or not believe Baker Mayfield can be a force for Oklahoma and for the Heisman this season?
You guys already know how much I like Baker Mayfield. You guys know I was born in Oklahoma City, and I've watched the Sooners a little bit. And I really like how Baker Mayfield plays. That first half, he did show a lot of promise. And I do think if he goes in the NFL draft this year, he will be one of the guys that makes the team better. Like, he'd be a pretty good fit on the Broncos, and I really do think he's going to win the Heisman. is Oklahoma Sooners keep on playing the way they do, because over the past couple of years, Mayfield has shown a lot of consistency. Oklahoma's always been on there on the fringe of being in the college football playoff, and I really do think that Mayfield really made his case for the Heisman tonight. Or not tonight, but the other night.
John, Baker Mayfield, very good performance. He texted Katy Perry. He was a firework versus UTEP. Do you think this is something that he can continue doing to defenses across the country this year?
Yeah, we've seen it time and time again, year after year. Baker Mayfield has always been a force in the NCAA ever since he started playing for Oklahoma, and he's been the huge reason why this Oklahoma team is always in the top 10 and always up in the conversation for the college football playoff. And if I'm not mistaken, they made it just 2 years back before losing in the first round, or in the Final Four first round. Again, if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I remember them being in that spot. And now, I think with a Big 12 championship in place, I believe that this will be another reason that Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield will just chip away even more, and this is even more proof that they are a top contending team and that they're not going to let one more game stop them from being on top.
Well, Kevin, you're very good at judging quarterbacks at the college level. How well did you like Baker Mayfield's performance, and do you think it's a sign of things to come for him?
I mean, look, if we're talking about if he could lead Oklahoma at anything, yes. It's Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has been a consistent college quarterback. He's consistently finished in some type of Heisman voting. I believe last year, 4th or 5th, I believe. I want to say 4th.
That sounds right.
Don't quote me on it. But the big test comes next week against Ohio State. On the road, in Columbus. They play Columbus, right?
Yeah, in Columbus. It's not a neutral site game, thank God.
In the Horseshoe, prime time, ABC football. It's a big game for him. And if he can walk in there and continue to prove that he's one of the best quarterbacks in college football, which, let's be real, right now he is, then I think there's no issue with him. I think the issue comes with the rest of the team. And if they can stay consistent enough, and if they can reach the conference championship, which has been the big issue with the Big 12 at this point, is they have not had that conference championship. But now that they finally have it, I don't think the issue is going to be Baker Mayfield per se. I think it's going to be the rest of the team.
And
John.
And I was correct. I just fact-checked myself. They did make the college football playoff 2 years back. They were fourth ranked and lost to Clemson, and we ended up seeing the first of the Clemson-Alabama series, where Alabama won, of course.
Kevin, to fact-check you, you were close. Baker Mayfield was 3rd last year, finishing above Jabril Peppers and Dede Westbrook, finishing behind Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson, who won it. But to me, this game, not necessarily this game, but these first few games will be a test, because Baker Mayfield lost, obviously, one of his best weapons in Dede Westbrook to the NFL draft, to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who took him.
And now he's got Blake Bortles, though, size circle.
Well, you look at it, yeah, it's like, I've said, yes, it's against UTEP, but you throw only one incompletion in 20 tries. You throw for 327 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's an impressive performance no matter how much you look at it. On a big stage, an opening weekend. But as Kevin said, I agree. The big test comes next weekend. It'll be one of the bigger games of the season already, if not one of the biggest games of the season outside of in non-conference play. And it will be a big game for him. How confident I feel in him? I feel very confident in him. I think he can take down Ohio State, but you never know. So let's move on from Baker Mayfield, and let's move on to the other big game out of non-conference, the primetime game from Atlanta Falcons' new stadium. Alabama beating Florida State 24-7, thanks to big performance from wide receiver Calvin Ridley, who had a touchdown and a 2-point conversion, and Damian Harris, who really deserves a mention this week for the blocked punt, which led to a field goal, and a rushing touchdown, which was obviously a touchdown. It really helped Bama put the game out of distance. John, we're going to start with the Bama fan here. Another dominating season for Saban and co for Alabama this year.
I think it's obvious at this point. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that they win it all, but I'm going to guarantee that they do make the playoff again. They're the only team that has made every single playoff since the 14 playoff was instated, and just watching them play that game against Florida State. Now, in my opinion, I believe 3 was a little high for a Florida State team that I wasn't really high on, but Florida State is.
Florida State, or what's the deal there?
But Florida State was still a good team, and the fact that they smashed them 24-7, and although the score was only 17, Alabama once again proving they are a second half team most of the time, where you had just in a row, you had blocked punt, interception, interception after interception, and then DeAndre Francois goes down. Just everything fell into place for Bama, and everything went haywire for Florida State. And Alabama just proved they have one of the most menacing defenses in the NCAA, and if their offense can stay consistent, which is something that was basically last year, their offense was pretty consistent until that game against Clemson. As long as their offense stays consistent and Jalen Hurts has another good season, along with Ridley and Damian Harris and Bo Scarborough behind him, and Nick Saban leads this team again with a fresh offensive coordinator, I think this team will once again be in the playoff and will be either 1 or 2, honestly, because after this game, I don't really see any hiccups in their schedule. Maybe against LSU or Auburn, where we will see the occasional hiccup, but even then, we've dominated those 2 teams the last few years ever since the kick six, the infamous kick six. So, I think they'll have a dominating year again.
Colby, I watched the game with you. I can see your frustration. When you think about it, how, as an FSU fan, obviously, how much did Alabama impress you?
We should have benched DeAndre Francois and gave up on the game. We should have just benched him to save his season and gave up on the game, so we don't have to ruin our entire season. We lose the game, but we lost our quarterback. We probably lost our fucking season.
Kevin, how impressed were you by Alabama week 1?
It's Alabama. Do I need to say that I'm impressed that Alabama won a football game?
No, but they're playing a high caliber team in Florida State.
It's fucking Alabama. It's fucking Nick Saban, arguably the best college coach of all time. I'm not surprised at this point that they beat Florida State. I'm not surprised that they held them to 7. I'm not surprised that they whipped them around in the second half like a ragdoll. I'm not surprised about any of this right now because it's fucking Alabama.
Alabama versus Miami national championship.
Kevin,
Richt versus Saban once again.
Kevin, hot take real quick. Do you think Saban can overtake Bear Bryant in the next few seasons?
Biasly, no, because fuck Nick Saban.
Realistically, probably shouldn't ask the Dolphins fans.
Realistically, sure. It just needs to, win more national championships. Last year, big mark on his record, in my book, is to go into somewhere, national championship favorites, not favors, and get beat by Clemson. It's concerning, but they'll be in the national championship again this year, no doubt about it.
Well, I'll lay it on Bama's side of this game real quick. Very impressive. Like John said, lower scoring, but I think that even shows how much more dominant they were. Nick Saban's recruiting always focuses on the trenches, the offensive and defensive lines. Both sides of the ball dominated Florida State. Got to Francois a lot. Was able to give Hurts a lot of time, give Scarborough and Harris a lot of room to run the football. Calvin Ridley benefited off of this. He looked very good. Looks like he's going to have another great season for Alabama. And as Kevin said, it might not be the most impressive to see Alabama win, but the way they did it definitely put a lot of teams on notice. So the final topic of this weekend is something Colby and most FSU fans, even I, even kind of indifferent about it, don't really want to talk about. But FSU's loss to Bama was very poor. Secondary, awful. Special teams, awful in the third quarter. Threw the game away. And no protection for DeAndre Francois. Pathetic, in my opinion, for Florida State. But Francois went down injured late in the game, was ruled out for the season with a left leg injury. Colby, no matter what quarterback starts for you to end the season, is there any faith for FSU to save their season?
I don't think so. I'm very depressed. But I would think J.J. Constantino is the better option because he has more experience, but fuck my life.
RKO!
RKO out of nowhere! By God! He just hit him!
From out of nowhere!
And JR.
From out of nowhere.
Good old Jim Ross.
Jump! No matter what quarterback starts for Florida State, can they still possibly make playoff and
No.
or the championship
No.
or save their season?
No.
Just no.
They're done.
No chance.
Like 3, 4. I'm seeing 3, 4 more losses. 2, 3, 4 more losses. I think Constantine hasn't. I'm pretty sure Constantino hasn't played a game yet.
He's played 9 passes.
I just don't think he has enough. I don't think they were ready for someone like Francois to go down. Like, obviously no one's ready for something like that to happen, but I think they're less prepared than other teams would be. And I just think...
I mean, I don't think any team's ready for their starting quarterback to go down injured in week 1.
Yeah, but some teams make sure that their backup has somewhat experience.
It doesn't matter. It's still a backup quarterback. I mean, this isn't
don't get me wrong.
He's
He's a quarterback recruited by Florida State, so he's not going to be garbage. He's not going to be terrible. But just getting him in is going to take a while, and playing in an ACC with teams like Louisville, Clemson, even without Deshaun Watson, Miami, who is back this year, in my opinion.
I love you.
Although I didn't think they were ranked at first, but...
Yeah, I don't like you anymore.
But...
Well, Kelly Bryant... Oh, my bad. I thought you were done.
But yeah, it's a tough ACC, and I think... You know, I think... I wouldn't doubt if they still do good and finish with 1, 2, 3 at the most losses. But I could just see them getting at least 2, 3, even 4 more losses with their starting quarterback going down, sadly.
I mean, luckily for James Blackman, if he does, or if Jimbo Fisher will turn him, which is looking likely that he will, his first game is against UL Monroe, which is, I mean, I guess somewhat lucky that
they'll get that win.
Against,
1-1.
Fire against Clemson on the road or something. But right after that, his big test is Miami, and he's got 1 week, 2 weeks maybe to prepare for that. To go into Miami, or not even to go into Miami, but to play Miami at home. For Miami, that's the biggest game of the year. For FSU, that's one of the biggest games of the year. I mean, both teams hate each other, and you don't really want to be throwing a freshman quarterback with no playing time under his belt except for high school football into a fire like that. I mean, it's 8 o'clock start under the lights. It's the definition of you might be fucked.
Mm-hmm. And even though it is only 1 week, definitely that will help having an opponent like UL Monroe, so they can at least get him into the feel of being quarterback, whoever they choose, of course, Constantino or Blackman. But yeah, Kevin makes a good point. You got really big games against Miami and Clemson coming up after that, and I don't think they're going to be prepared for that.
Well, Kevin, whether it is Blackman or JJ, do you really think that Florida State can save their season?
Yes, to a point. I think it's going to be. I think playoffs might be out of the question, but the big test to begin the season is Miami. And honestly, if I'm being honest, Miami wins by 10 points. I mean, they'll play Florida State hard. They'll play them till the end of the game. They'll play them constantly hard. So the question is, who's the better quarterback? Is it Blackman, or is it Malik Rozier on the other end, or is it who's the better defense? Because Miami's defense this year could be really good. So I think the question right now is, do we trust Jimbo Fisher enough to walk in there and, I mean, honestly, Jimbo Fisher, excuse me, what a name, is a great coach. He's one of the best coaches in college football right now. But he needs to, I mean, this is his big test, and I don't know if they can make the playoffs when they have to play teams like Florida. I know they lost, but they had 2 starters suspended, I believe 11 players overall. Clemson, who, looks like Clemson, and Louisville, who, barely beat Purdue, but they still won, and that was an underlights game as well. So I think possibility is there, but I think it's got to be addressed sooner rather than later on how they're going to approach this.
Well, Colby, sorry for ruining any positivity you had about the Noles in 3 days. In my opinion, I still think the Noles can be all right this year. Yes, they have some tough games. They will have to play Miami, as you've mentioned, Florida, as you've mentioned, Clemson, as John mentioned, Louisville, who tore them to shreds last season with Lamar Jackson. He's still there. They still have to play him. But I think you can look at a 9-3 record and a big bowl game, so maybe 10-3 or 9-4. And with all that considered, it still could relatively be an okay season for Florida State. Not great for the Florida State standards that most people expect, but good enough to where when all things considered, it might be an okay end to the season.
Not even a 3 days. It's like in the matter of 2 quarters, their season went from, we might beat Alabama, we might have a chance this year, to Francois going down and it looking like a season-ending injury.
Well, that's college football for you. It's very unforgiving. You can be unbelievable for the first 10 weeks and then have one bad conference loss and your season's over just like that. Well, that ends week 1, the week of big teams playing cupcakes and those awful neutral site games.
Technically, this is week 2.
Okay, so whatever. For most teams, it's the opening week. Except for like USF, it's the opening week.
And Stanford.
And Rice.
And Stanford and like Colorado State and Oregon State. It's opening week.
The prestigious Rice University.
There will be some big games in the top 25 next week, and Louisville look to bounce back after sort of a rough opening game versus Purdue. They head to UNC at 12 o'clock. Michigan looking to build off the win against Florida as they welcome Cincinnati to the Big House at 3:30. At 7:30, Georgia off a good opening week. Head to South Bend to take on the Fighting Irish in what might be one of the more exciting games next weekend, as well as the rivalry between Auburn and Clemson at Death Valley, home to Clemson. And, of course, the big game everyone will be talking about, Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield leading themselves into the horseshoe to take on J.T. Barrett and Ohio State. Also in the Pac-12 at 8:30, Sam Darnold, who we talked about having a bad game, could have a very good game and bounce back and make us all forget as they take on the Cardinal of Stanford. Well, that will do it for the first episode of the
Wait, you forgot something.
What?
And Saturday at 3:30 p.m., Alabama, #1, battles Fresno State. Tune in. To be fair, they usually play a shitty team. Fresno State's not bad.
Word by like 60 points. Prestigious university football team there is there.
If you're talking about a prestigious school as Fresno State, be sure to watch Wisconsin as they deal with the older team that is Florida Atlantic University.
Fresno State is averaging 66 points per game and 613 yards per game.
In one game. Oh yeah, by the way, LSU bound for the upset as they host Chattanooga. Alright, well that'll do it for the first episode of the Redshirts. Now let's talk about an opening week, but as the season progresses, more and more talking points will happen. For my partners, Colby Guy, Kevin Fielder, and John Palazzo, I'm Kyle Friedman. Hopefully I'm not underwater next week and I get to watch some college football. We will see you next time.